Welcome, folks. This is Bob from BBD, News with Views, Redux on RCEP. As I'd expected, lots of naysayers that are coming out of the woodwork, talking about how we've missed the biggest opportunity. Because the biggest naysayer is China, which has said that it's been the biggest strategic blunder and that we missed the bus. The tone of their reaction should suggest to you that they are the ones who are hurting. We are not. But this is a doomsday kind of event that I don't think is really real. As Casey Singh says, RCEP shifts Indo-Pacific dynamics, blow to Delhi. I would say it's anything but that, okay? Then you have another one, which is Indian Express. Ramnath Goenka founded, seize the deal. Trade lifts all boats. New Delhi must get inside the RCEP tent at the earliest opportune moment. I say, take your time, not necessary. This is gobbledygook at its best or at its worst, right? What does it have to say? At a time when globalization has lost its luster and much of the world looking inwards, if that's the case, why should we get into RCEP, right? He says, by staying out, India has blocked itself from a trade bloc that represents 30% of the global economy and world population touching over 2.2 billion. Counter it with this new trade deal that's coming up with Africa, which is a new trade deal, which is 1.3 billion people. You yourself have 1.2 billion. Are you afraid? Absolutely not. Why would you be afraid, right? The next it says is, so why blame trade deals? Moreover, trade deficits are not all bad and definitely not for consumers. That's the statement. It may not be bad for the consumers, but it's bad for employment, and since employment is it becomes the eventual consumer, you actually gut it by taking the approach of helping the consumer all the time, right? This is what's gutted the US economy, right? Even otherwise, imports of cheaper intermediate goods only help to add value to final products. Well, I don't think it helps add any value. All it does is it forces you to become a screwdriver technology. No R&D. This is exactly the fallacy of what happened when we entered the last deal. All we've ended up being is lazy corporates, Indian business houses, who all they've done is import, brand, and sell. Or screwdriver technology, no research and development. Anybody who's writing this article needs to look at the empirical evidence that goes behind it. Then he says, but providing stability in export and a favorable exchange rate did help the industry shape up and match global quality and pricing. But absolutely without R&D, which means it was absolutely without a spine. It could be broken at any time, as just happened when supply chains broke down. Then you have, instead of sitting out and building tariff walls across sectors, it must prod and incentivize the industry to be competitive and get inside the RCEP tent at the earliest opportune moment. I think absolutely not. While incentivizing industry to improve efficiency is necessary, it is absolutely not required to join the RCEP. I'll tell you why, folks. Look at this again, right? This is your competing economies, right? These are your complementary economies. And together, by far greater than this in terms of technology, in terms of FDI, and in terms of markets. And when you add the upcoming new African free trade, and India is able to approach this in together with Europe and the United States, you absolutely have a game changer, and RCEP is not necessary anymore. And then most likely, TPP might get a rebirth after Biden. Who knows? Don't worry about RCEP. RCEP is nothing but the, what is that called? That East India Company redux with China as the ogre and the leader. Now as we go, let's just take a look at what everybody's saying. You have, as Ranade says, a confident India need not stay out of RCEP anymore. What's confident India? There is no confident India. There is no R&D. If there is no R&D, you can't be a confident India. Then another one says, India is better off joining RCEP. God, why? Need to play a role in writing groups' rules. Do we care? Not really. It is vital that New Delhi join world's largest trading bloc sooner rather than later. This is not just because gains from trade are significant, but also because membership is a prerequisite to having a say in writing RCEP's rules to safeguard India's interests and the interests of several countries that are too small to stand up to the largest member, China. I think that's all this was for, guys, for Japan, to trying to keep us in. And in Times of India continues, but Times of India takes a different stand to that economic. Do other FTAs. He says there is welcome recognition in New Delhi that Beijing represents its biggest strategic security challenge today, and economically decoupling from China is in India's best interest. Absolutely. After all, China plays by its own set of opaque trade rules, and there are serious concerns about its influence in sensitive sectors such as telecom and 5G. China can use tech equipment here to carry out espionage and cyber attacks. Laura says this, a concern that even RCEP members Australia has raised. In fact, most RCEP members are concerned about Chinese predatory practices and aggressive foreign policy. This means there are inherent tensions within the RCEP architecture. I don't see it. I mean, exactly. They're absolutely my point of view. We need them to boost trade access, market and capital, import the latest technologies and increase our competitiveness. So basically trade is required, but you need it, which gives you technology and R&D and FDI. And that is not going to come out of China or ASEAN, folks. And what do we have here? India's trade policy, keep China out. Absolutely. Hindustan Times, the prime directive of India's trade policy today is simple. Sign nothing that opens the door to Chinese products. That is why New Delhi turned its back on the RCEP trade agreement, which was signed this weekend. India will pay a price in terms of global credibility. It is rare for a country to walk out of a free trade agreement with which it engaged from the moment of inception. Yet, it is a powerful signal that India henceforth will adhere to a strategic trade policy that breaks with its past ad hoc mix of generous market access and arbitrary protectionism. And all of this comes with minimal economic costs, as India has FTAs with all but 3 RCEP members. And folks, that is what we should remember. Repercussions. Here, Thailand, EU question India's import restrictions on tires, AC, TV sets. But I guess this decision was to basically keep China out, a bulk of which came from China. These included tires for cars, motorcycles, etc., etc. More than 97% of India's imports of ACs came from China and Thailand. Thailand said it is ready to meet bilaterally. So look, all these countries are going to be forced to talk to us bilaterally. India is too important a market for a country like Thailand to just dump us, man. They are desperate. And now against the wall and being forced by China to sign the RCEP. Indian government continues to do a good job here. Government mulls easing rules for border nation FDI. I guess China is going to be allowed in with a caveat, which is okay. Their money, our money, that's good. Then finally, this is what it stands for. India on RCEP, no pacts which are FTAs by stealth with China. Absolutely not, folks. I think by trying to couple strategic interest of Australia and New Zealand and Japan with RCEP and doubting the intention of those 2 countries, actually I think is not something that will sing, because I think that those 2 countries have figured out how to keep these 2 things separate. You know, all these naysayers who are forcing us to, relook at RCEP are making RCEP sound like the next best thing that's happened after sliced bread. But I would say it's probably more like discovery of corn syrup that made everybody fat and happy. Unfortunately, extremely unhealthy and fat around the waist, right? And all these guys, analysts, throw up numbers like, it's a 2.5 billion people market, 30% of global GDP. It's talking up a block that is essentially has huge national security contradiction amongst themselves, whether it's Indonesia, China, whether it's Vietnam with China, the Philippines and China, whether it's Australia and China, Japan and China. I don't see easy sailing for this block, as far as I can see. Look at what's the other event that's happening right now. Just when the United States is changing presidents and you're going from being America alone to multilateralism, is what is happening in Africa, folks. As a collective, the continent is embarking on a new economic path. In 2018, Africa heads of state signed an agreement that would bring to life the AFCTA, a game changer in African regional and international trade. When it comes into effect, in stages over the next several months and years, the AFCTA will cover a market of more than 1.2 billion, so I get 2.5 billion, what the hell, and up to 3 trillion in combined GDP, which could double by 50%, right? This is a place where India actually finds itself a good fit. We already have great cultural ties, we've got great presence, Indian brands have presence, including Tata and Airtel, and we have a lot of Indian diaspora there. This is the the market that we should be hitting with head on in collaboration with the United States. Is it? But to give the AFCTA the best chance of delivering on its promise, the continent will need help and investment for updating its infrastructure, Indian help, Indian body, and money from everywhere else, right? That's the way to do it. A joint venture between the United States, Europe, India, and Japan. It says, in short, AFCTA will be the most valuable if Africa is able to diversify its exports and increase the sophistication of its products, and that will only be possible with a functional infrastructure spine, including food, power, and transportation. We can play a huge role here. This is where the leadership under the incoming Biden administration can play an important role. Biden administration can collaborate with other partners and drive private finance to Africa's single market. This will also include India. The bulk of India will help the United States to counter China in Africa. In 2018, Washington launched Prosper Africa to coordinate US government resources and expand business opportunities in Africa with a goal of doubling two-way trade between the countries and the continent. India, be ready. These ventures, acting in concert with European, Japanese, and Indian partners, would have a significant impact on economic growth in Africa and the expansion of Africa as a market for outside goods and services, and keep China out. Important, folks. And why do we have this? Japan played big role in RCEP, keeping door open for India. Obviously, they want India as a counter to China. But you see the contradictions for, as I mentioned, for Australia and Japan. Second phase of Malabar exercise kicks off today. This is the Quad. Japan is included, and Japan and Australia are there, and obviously the focus is China. Contradictions there. But this is what Colonel Sibbal nails it. RCEP pact shows China can pursue aggressive policies without cost. He says, signing the RCEP agreement at this junction was absolutely a strategic mistake by all these countries, ASEAN and Japan. And why does he say that? President Trump, however impulsive and erratic, understood China's game. Its trade and technology war against China signified the beginning of a struggle for global power. Question. The Japan, Australia, and some ASEAN countries as America's military allies and partners should be ambivalent about the power struggle and pursue hedging strategies in favor of China may have short-term advantage, but will prove costly for the future given the nature of Chinese power, its authoritarian political system, the suppression of freedoms on which it rests, etc. Welcome to the East India Company from China, folks. Signing RCEP when the US is in electoral transition sends a peculiar message, as if the change in the administration there is not material. It is not a peculiar message. It's a straight-on message to the United States that we are the guys driving the world. It's not them, and we really don't care about the United States or what it's doing. China, ironically, is the fulcrum of our RCEP, and the US is out. For the Chinese, the RCEP is the big diplomatic success. RCEP shows that China can pursue its aggressive political and economic policies without cost, that it cannot be isolated, and the world cannot de-link itself from the Chinese market. Here, India must provide an example. We have de-linked. We are the first people to ban TikTok. We should continue this process because our coupling with China is the least as compared to all the rest of the world. What does it say here? India favors bilateral free trade agreements over China-led RCEP. And what is important for you to note? It is widely known that RCEP is not lucrative enough without India, but India cannot engage with any trade bloc led by China, which is true, which is globally notorious as an aggressor. Besides, it's a direct threat to India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Look at what China has, like I said, said on Monday that India had committed a strategic blunder and missed the bus to long-term growth by not signing the deal. So now what does it say? The Chinese outburst shows how India has frustrated Beijing's design to invade the Indian market. That's true, folks. Then he said, what does Jay Shankar have to say? The effect of trade agreements signed since India's economic reforms of 1991 had been to deindustrialize some sectors. And this is what is of the greatest importance. We have actually deindustrialized all our basic industry because of those agreements and given the advantage to China. The consequences of future ones would lock us into global commitments, many of them not to our advantage. Those who argue stressing openness and efficiency do not present the full picture. This is equally a world of non-tariff barriers, of subsidies and state capitalism, folks. And here he says India will have to play to its strengths and negotiate trade agreements with existing consumption hubs in the American, Europe and emerging Africa. Jai Hind.